Hello, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon session of the Future of Work track at Austin Startup Week. I'm broadcasting here from Capital Factory. Glad to have everyone here. We're now transitioning to a session called A Glimpse into the Future of Platform Changes. And what it'll be is a series of 3 lightning talks. And to introduce each of those lightning talk presenters, we have Capital Factory's Vice President of Accelerator and Investment Fund, Brian Chambers. Brian, glad to have you here. Excellent shirt. That's a great team in Dallas. I know them very well.
That's awesome, Gavin. Thank you. And welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for a deeper look at a few platforms that will help craft the future of work. Now, the future of work can mean a lot of different things, but today, as you heard Gavin mention, I'm excited to host 3 different lightning talks with founders who are changing how we work and perform at our jobs using their unique software platforms. My name is Brian Chambers, and I'll be hosting today's session with Tony Portman from Walkabout Workplace, Tom Miller from ClearForce, and Eagle Wu from Vinci VR. I'm the Vice President of Accelerator and Venture Fund at Capital Factory, where I manage a team across the state responsible for sourcing and evaluating technology startups for Capital Factory's programs and investment. I'm also a member of the faculty at UT Dallas, where I teach venture capital at the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. But enough about me. We're here to check out some awesome new tech and get inside the minds of entrepreneurs that are literally paving the way towards the future of work. I even put on, as you can see, my Hello Future t-shirt this morning just for this. And I'd be eager to know if anyone watching knows what Dallas-based startup logo I'm repping on my t-shirt. If you happen to know, let me know in the chat. I'd like to go ahead and bring up our first founder, Tony Portman from Walkabout Workplace. And if you do have questions that come up, please be sure to put them in the chat as well. Welcome, Tony. I understand you might have some slides and possibly even a great demo to share with us today. What are you working on at Walkabout Workplace?
Well, Brian, we're working on the future of work. What else? And thanks so much for having both Walkabout and me here. I'm hoping that everyone can see my screen. Is that correct?
I sure can. It looks good.
Okay, great. So I'm thrilled to be here and to talk a little bit about what we're doing at Walkabout. We really do think that we're solving a pretty big problem. And by the way, most of us a year ago, and hopefully a year from now, will be at Austin Startup Week in Austin face-to-face. But you know what? We're not. We have a pandemic amongst us. And if you're like me or like many, you're suffering from a bunch of virtual meetings that are maybe driving you crazy. Zoom fatigue is real. We are now in this cool session, but it's almost like being together, but it's not. We're scheduled by calendars, by WebEx, GoToMeeting, Microsoft Teams meetings. The tool plethora is wide and vast, and we start all of our meetings, are you there and can you hear me? And there's no place to go. Brian, as you know, especially at Capital Factory, people come to co-working locations because they want to be with people. They want to be around people in the synergy of co-creating and collaborating. And so companies are really struggling with what they're going to do, not only during this pandemic, but what is the new norm going to be? And by the way, this was happening well before COVID. If you looked at the data, 72.3% of all US workers were going to work either partially or fully remote from their teams. So what we've created is a brand new place to go to work. And that's what I'm the most excited about. Every day I get to go to work in my office with my colleagues. This is just an example of where I go to work every day, but across Texas, people are going to work in their offices. For example, this is a law firm in Dallas, Texas, up on the tollway. But lawyers from Los Angeles, from Houston, and from Dallas are all coming into FBFK to do their legal work with co-creation and collaboration as a team. Up on the place where the Cowboys, I won't talk a lot about our football team, but where the Cowboys are at One Cowboys Way, we've also got the ability to replicate a real office, just like our friends at BHC have done. A CEO that said, "Where have you been all my life?" Because he's got 6 companies that he manages in 6 states. And he's struggling with, do people come back to brick and mortar? Do they stay at home? And then how does he navigate between his companies? And he said he'll never do it without Walkabout. And then you can have just a building of a company that may not exist in brick and mortar, but comes directly. So the first thing that I do is I come to work and I log in and I'm immediately ported into my office. And the very first thing that I do when I get to my office is I pull up what we fondly call our heads-up display, and I can see my colleagues across my office workplace. I've got full video, audio, screen share, and then I've got a little guy that can raise his hand. And I love our ability to have up to 10 people in any office or any room, up to 50 people in group rooms, and then I'll show you briefly Zoom in the room or Teams in the room. And what I want to do, if I come into work, I see my colleagues. If I hover, I see their names. So this is Leonard Moons. He's in Amsterdam. By the way, they're back to shelter in place. So he'll be working in Walkabout for the foreseeable future. I'm going to walk down the hall and see my colleague, Chris Colgan. And when I walk down the hall, I literally click a button and I'm dropped into not only Chris's office, but his branded office. So I begin to create a sense of culture, a sense of community, a sense of belonging. Hey, Chris.
Hi, Tony.
How are you, sir?
Great.
Hey, will you do a screen share while I show these guys a couple of functions, and then we're going to answer some questions. So here's Chris. Again, I move his video around. What I love about our screen share is up to 10 people can simultaneously screen share, and you can use it full screen or picture in picture, switching to what Chris is showing me, going full screen with the touch of a button and seeing it here, and then still staying picture in picture. Again, when I do staff meetings, and when our companies across the globe, including Hitachi and Japan, do staff meetings, all 10 people collaborating, co-creating across the platform. So Chris, let's take these guys into the cafe. I think one of the things that's missing is the water cooler conversation, or to walk down the hall without being scheduled and know that somebody can be in and have a quick cup of coffee. So now you see my colleague move to our cafe, again, branded Walkabout, touch of a button, and that gives me the opportunity to show you a couple of other features. And then Brian, I'm going to come back to you for Q&A. Number one, what we have is an application console. And in this console, I've got all of the apps, and there's Chris drinking his coffee, that you might use to do your job. What I love is with the touch of a button, you're live in that app. So now I could tweet about Austin Venture Week and the wonderful job Capital Factory is doing. I come out of that, but I can have Slack and Zoom and Teams and all of the most important apps that I use to do my job. And then two other cool things. One is, let's say that Chris and I were in having a celebration and we wanted to use our social bot called Puppers, who I like a lot. And we wanted to get one of our other colleagues to drop in to the cafe. All I need to do is either hover or go up to my chat box, and I can, with the touch of a button, have Slack-like chat, only better. I say better because we have a Slack bridge where we can mirror everything that we do in our Slack channel into our Walkabout, and then we can leave audio chat. Hey, Leonard, why don't you come in and join us to celebrate Chris's birthday? Boom. And there it goes. And that's an audio recording that just went. But here's what people love. And I want to highlight, we encrypt at the video level peer-to-peer, and we encrypt in the chat channel. No Zoom bombers here. I leave a video chat. Extremely important if I'm transmitting a really important message to the company, if I'm a trainer and I want new product information to get out, if I'm selling something and I want somebody to buy, and I click OK, and with the touch of a button, there goes a video chat that can not only be viewed on the spot, but can be downloaded and viewed later. So that's how we work, except for the other cool room where I can go in and see with the touch of a button, either on my Walkabout, or I can be in my Zoom in the room with one button. So Brian, I'll come back to you and let you answer questions, and I'm gonna answer them from our boardroom.
Well, that's awesome, Tony. Fantastic. I've looked at so many different platforms. This is one of the slickest platforms that I think is so intentionally and well thought out. And I know that you were working on this well before COVID. So, I mean, the elephant in the room is like, you are so well positioned for perhaps one of the companies, I think the most exciting, that's so well positioned to capitalize on this accelerated trend and this change. But my question for you is, where does the pendulum fall? How do companies strike a new balance between physical and virtual after the pandemic, after the virus subsides and fades into the background? What do you think is going to happen? And what's the role of a walkabout workplace 1 year, 2 years into the future?
I think that's the $1 billion question, Brian. Thanks. And you're right. We were looking at this well before COVID because distributed teams are real. If you think about headquarters and being in locations, franchisees separated, co-working locations like a WeWork or a Capital Factory, people want to be together with their intact teams, but it's difficult to do it even without a pandemic. So what we see the future being is one of a new norm, and that is a hybrid of on-premise brick and mortar and a virtual workplace where you've got the visibility. So I ran a company, it had 15,000 employees in 31 centers or locations in 16 countries. I would have used this every day. And what you have to do is operationalize your thinking about the way you're going to use virtual and digital tools in the midst of a hybrid world. So we can make a floor plan look exactly like your office. And then you've got the visibility across the enterprise of where people are and what they're doing. So we have just designed for NEC in Japan a custom floor where they're going to come into their exact replica of their floor plan. And the expectation is whether they're there physically or they're there virtually, they're going to do daily, weekly, and monthly activities in the floor plan itself. This
Awesome.
is also super important, I think, with people that work from home in call centers and in BPO, where they want to be attached to their team, but they've got to use their tools.
Tony, I think we probably just have time. I bet for just one more question, and I see it's coming in from the audience. Can you lock your room if you're having a confidential meeting or a private meeting so you can't just pop in on Tom there? And so that's my first question. And what other features really differentiate you from the other maybe competitors that are out there in the platform, other platforms like similar to Walkabout today? Can you speak to that real quick? I want to just note we do have about 1 to 2 more minutes, and so before we wrap up, I hope you can maybe shine some light on those questions for us.
So the first question is a layup. So I don't know who asked it, but I'm really happy they did. If you look on my floor plan, these 4 colleagues have red circles. That means that they are they're doing real work, but their door is locked. Here I am in my corner office. I click. By the way, we have audibles, doorbells, door knocks, and locking of the door. And that means that I'm in, but I'm not available for you to drop in. So I'm glad that you asked that question. And the second, I don't even know where to start. But what you've seen, I think, is really the secret sauce. We are the only, and by the way, there is no competition that has the quality of audio and video that you've just seen, 10 people up to 50 people with this kind of audio, video, moving the video around, screen sharing simultaneously. And then we are application agnostic. So in the application console, for productivity purposes, with the click of a button, you can install really any application that you use that's proprietary or available. And then what I also love that's second to none and nobody has it like us is our chat functionality, where we can coexist with the Slacks of the world. But the most important thing is people want to see and be seen. If I'm a CEO, I want to know who's where and what they're doing. Alton Martin's right there in Austin somewhere. I'm in Colorado. Anton, our co-founder's in Buffalo, New York. And I have complete visibility of everybody that's in the office at any point in time. So I'll just go down and show you that FBFK law firm from Dallas, Houston, and LA. This is real and this is live. So here's LA. here's Houston, here's Dallas, and I hover and I see that Cindy Montgomery. That's what it means to have digital, virtual, prop tech real estate.
I love it, Tony. I'm so excited. Like I mentioned, when COVID happened, one of the first things we did as a fund to help assess our portfolio was apply what we call a COVID impact score to every single one of our portfolio companies. Were you negatively affected? Were you neutral? Or were you positively affected, and kind of to what degree? I can't think of another startup that's so positively affected by COVID. It's excited to see your business surge, and truly this process really accelerate the virtual and physical, the dual adoption of what it means to work in a futuristic platform like this. Thank you so much, Tony. I'm really excited to introduce our next entrepreneur, Tom Miller, founder and CEO of ClearForce, an employee risk management platform that enables business leaders and managers to support their employees when it matters most, whether they're working from home or a brick and mortar office. Tom, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
At ClearForce.
I'm the CEO of ClearForce and one of the co-founders. Again, we thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about what we're up to here in the future of the workplace. And I'll start with kind of the list of 2020, right? And on this list, certainly one of the things is the never-ending stream of headlines on top U.S. companies, global brands that absolutely get surprised by forms of misconduct in its leadership and within the workforce. Sexual harassment, Me Too, intimidation, fraud, discrimination problems. And the common thread in almost all of these cases is an inability to escape the media frenzy that follows, to be able to get out of that cycle and to move on. And the reason these organizations can't end the cycle is they don't have the answers, right? So leadership doesn't have the facts and the information's readily at hand. They get surprised and they're scrambling. And eventually they're going to figure it out. I mean, eventually, in hindsight, they'll put the pieces together. They'll pick up the patterns of behaviors and events of the issues that, from a forensic perspective, become so obvious, but were missed as these issues were moving through. And this is a all too common challenge across organizations in different industries, and really it creates this opportunity for technology-enabled cultural change. To be able to leverage a platform that can eliminate toxic leadership, toxic cultures, the leadership that creates or enables this misconduct, and eventually is harming organizations to the point that it makes it difficult for them to recruit and retain talent. And it's not good enough in 2020 to sit back and expect that you're going to just wait for your employees to call an 800 hotline. Nobody thinks that's anonymous, and many times folks don't know what to report, so everything becomes underreported. Organizations need systems and they need policies that proactively seek insight into these cultural issues within the workforce. Issues that reach the right authority at the right time so they can take preemptive actions. They must be proactive, and they have to discover these red flags early, which means they constantly have to be looking for them. And they have to identify what's relevant to their business and how that may differ between different job roles or positions or areas of responsibility. They have to protect employee privacy, and they have to protect against bias and favoritism, discrimination, and targeting. And they must have seamless communication between HR and legal and compliance and security, which in most organizations all have levels of responsibility and authority to set and execute policy. And they have to have a centralized trail, an audit trail, back to the media frenzy, so that they have the information at hand and ready to make decisions. And so ClearForce has developed a unique patent pending risk management platform that enables organizations to have this complete view of hidden pressure and stress and employee misconduct. And we do it by solving the regulatory hurdle to make information actionable inside an organization, and by focusing on privacy and legal guardrails and compliance and compliant workflow and employee consent, all as a foundation that enables these organizations to be able to put these programs in place. And then, Brian, I'll come back for questions.
So, Tom, I'm really eager to know the types of businesses specifically. I mean, maybe you don't share anything that, of course, is confidential, but the types of businesses that you're finding this type of product and solution to be a really great fit for today, and how do you think maybe that changes over the coming months or years?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think so. Any regulated business to begin with. So if you're basically running pre-hire background checks because you believe you have some risk to intellectual property theft or other concerns, certainly individuals that are customer facing or individuals that have access to consumers, those tend to be organizations that need to have platforms for this type of risk management purpose. As it relates to internal incident reporting, I think most organizations today need to find ways to increase the level of insight and knowledge they have within their workforce.
Yeah, well, and Tom, I have the same question for you that I asked Tony, but maybe let me layer on some additional context, which is, where do you see the pendulum swinging back between physical and virtual, and how do corporations find this balance? But I'm wondering mostly, how does it affect ClearForce in your business? Are there any shifts that ClearForce is making where you feel like it can capitalize on as a result of employees working from home, perhaps for longer periods than we suspected they might?
Right, and I think I agree with Tony. I mean, I think what our customers are telling us is that it'll be a long time before folks work their way back into physical as a majority model. I certainly think it's going to be a hybrid for quite a while, and that hybrid model creates risk for most of the organizations that we work with. I mean, it's challenging when a manager doesn't have the ability to have face-to-face contact with an individual and pick up on some of the normal signs that you would in kind of those informal exchanges, right? So how do I make sure that the employees are in the right spot, that they're actively engaged in the business, that there are not these risk factors when I can't see them? One thing that we've done from a ClearForce perspective is we've really been building out this configurable categorical incident management capability, because we see that this underreporting is an issue. And so we've created web-based reporting portals, and we've created remote worker specific reporting capabilities. So whether it's online harassment, inappropriate sharing of confidential or customer data, cues that you're picking up maybe in video conferences and otherwise, so that their individuals know specific information that leadership wants to be able to address. Yeah.
Well, Tom, I wrote a next question down, and I wanted to double click on something that you said, and that's really what's happening in this, in the virtual environment. So my question, maybe specifically to double click, is, in what ways has COVID really highlighted the importance of monitoring and the risk and new risk mitigation that's needed for workforces in this virtual environment? Are there any trends or kind of critical insights of new high risk behaviors virtually than physically?
Well, I think there's a couple things. So I think everybody today operates at some heightened level of pressure and stress, and we hear that all the time. And so I think that becomes concerns, particularly, and I mentioned customer facing or for business front facing employees. That's a concern, right? That you have somebody that's in a customer service role and a sales role and an advising role that has direct interaction with consumers that may be under compounding and really negative forms of individual stress that could manifest itself, and certainly in forms of discrimination and other inappropriate acts. Organizations are worried about that. And so they want to pick up and they want to understand it. And I think it leads into a second major trend, which is interesting for us, a lot of the focus on security pre-COVID. I think one trend that's emerged over the last 6 months has really been employee mental health and wellness. And I think employers are increasingly concerned about disengaged individuals that are, again, remotely working. And so whether that's just increasing levels of communication through management and supervisors or specifically connecting them to wellness programs, that's become a increasing priority.
Tom, I'm interested to know, what do you think kind of the next frontier is for ClearForce to take on and to do even better and to take on more a bigger role with employee risk management, with or without COVID, post-COVID? And even more specifically, if you can share, I'm dying to know if you can provide us with maybe a specific use case or a case study of an individual, and I would assume also an organization, because they would be a part of an organization that's been positively impacted because of this platform. Is there an example you could share with us, or two?
Yeah, so in the last 6 months, we have been spending a lot of time on the suicide prevention problem. And we think we're just scratching the surface here, but our starting point has really been with military veterans, active military, and first responder populations, where the suicide numbers are just terrible. And like, as an example, so there's 20 veterans that will die by suicide every day, and 14 of those 20 have no contact with the VA at the time of their death. So there needs to be better forms, better means to outreach an individual that needs help and is at risk. And so what we're excited about is a lot of the same capabilities that we work with organizations, again, from a security perspective, to be able to identify individuals that are struggling under compounding pressure. It's a perfect use case, right? And in the suicide prevention case, the action's simply preemptive outreach, right? Reaching out to an individual that needs help at that point in time, so that resources can be deployed and communication and connection can occur. So we're super excited about this. It's a big passion of ours. And again, I feel like the work we're doing on the military and veteran side is absolutely applicable to private sector organizations as well. And I just think this idea of the use of dynamic information to be able to identify individuals that are struggling under pressure is a broad use case across the board.
Tom, that hits home in a way that means a lot, because I am aware of somebody who, fell victim to suicide as a result of this, pandemic and staying at home. And I know that's a very real problem. So thank you for your work. Certainly keep it up. Very important problem. And I really appreciate you being with us today to give us a glimpse into the types of technologies and solutions that are going to help us live our best life and take care of our employees and our workforces. Keep it up, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, we all know that the future of work is virtual, but what role does virtual reality play when is it really going to finally going to take and grab traction with enterprises? I'm excited to introduce Eagle Wu, founder and CEO of Vinci VR, to help us take a deeper look at another future of work platform. Eagle, welcome, man. What are you working on?
Hey, thanks for having me here. Yeah, so as mentioned, my name is Eagle Wu. I'm the CEO, founder of Vinci Virtual Reality. So the problem that we're solving right now, and the big issue that a lot of enterprises are facing, is oftentimes you have to train workforces for these very hands-on or very scenario-specific training tasks. An example is, you see the image on the right, that's actually the nacelle of a big wind turbine. And, for infrastructure training like this, your trainees have to get really good hands-on and visual kind of information and be able to process it in order to do their jobs well. The problem is students forget 90% of what they learn if they don't get enough hands-on training. And oftentimes simulators, such as the one shown here, they're still expensive. They can't really adapt. And especially during times of COVID, I mean, you see the three gentlemen here, they're not a single person here is social distancing. So it's a very challenging task that has been compounded by the recent pandemic even further. So at Vinci, what we've built is Codex. Codex is our virtual reality training platform that features three key parts. So the first part of it is our authoring platform, and this really allows instructors to go in, customize, and create completely new VR content and scenarios as easily and quickly as PowerPoint. The next part of this is the simulator. This is where we can render highly realistic environments and the creations that teams make through Codex authoring, and render that in an interactive virtual reality environment and headset. And then lastly, provide a very robust data set of analytics and performance data that instructors can use. So why use Codex, and what kind of benefits have we been seeing? First of all, virtual reality has kind of died down a little bit recently since the hype, but we're now starting to see kind of VR hardware kind of tick back up. Right now, VR has gone to the point where it's advanced enough that you can get a lot of realistic, interactive training, but at the fraction of the price of a lot of these enterprise simulators. The other part for us, especially with Codex, is how we manage content. So content now has become more adaptive. We can deploy a lot faster. And with analytics especially, this has been extremely helpful for enterprise companies training their workforce. Just some quick case studies of where we've seen Codex work and kind of the impacts. We've been mostly working with the US Air Force. Some stats, we saw an immediate 83% jump in task understanding while increasing hands-on training time by almost 500 hours. Other work we've been involved in, worked with the Army, again, immediate jump. And then as mentioned very early on, we've also been working with the offshore wind sector, which has been a interesting use case that we've seen today. So I'm going to take it back to Brian for you to ask any questions. I'd love to talk more about any of the stuff we mentioned.
Yeah, well, and I also have the same question for you, Eagle. Where do you think the pendulum falls? And I preface this question with really a difference, what appears to me to be a key difference in how you might answer this question is, in the examples, we clearly see people working together in very hands-on, intensive, industrial environments. My question to you is, which seems very, very different than the other, the two other presenters today. So my question really is, does training virtually in virtual reality work just as good? Or is this really built, is this a solution for hands-on, in-person, on-premise training?
That's a great question. So it depends a bit on the actual task itself. So, if we're not talking about, can you feel specific wires through your fingers? There are haptics technologies that are being developed for VR, but those are still relatively early, probably give or take 5 years before you can get really good touch and feel. That kind of training is a little bit difficult to do, but highly visual things are perfect for VR. Is this wind turbine properly installed and maintained? That's a very visual task, but it's very difficult to pull off without putting someone in an actual turbine or an actual virtual reality turbine.
Eagle, other than gaming, like media and gaming, which we know has seen some adoption of virtual reality, do you believe this is the first major and real kind of enterprise use case for virtual reality, which is the hands-on training and learning at the enterprise level? Or another way I'll maybe ask this question is fast forward 5 to 10 years, and what do you think the market of adoption in the B2B sector really looks like for virtual reality applications? What corporations are using virtual reality in 5 or maybe 10 years from now to gain advantages like the ones your platform is currently providing?
Yeah, so visually for, because VR is a very visual tool, a lot of the other use cases we've seen with VR that, we haven't particularly been working on but are very interesting is kind of slowly taking the things that we do on our computer and putting it into VR. So we've seen people make like Microsoft Excel and spreadsheets and put it into VR where you can see data on a 3-dimensional plane. We've seen everything from architecture and so on and so forth. I think to be realistic, in 5 years, I don't think everyone's going to be wearing a VR headset when they go to work all day, 8 hours a day. But I do think for a lot of, like, we're going to start seeing a lot of jobs and tasks start being put in leveraging VR, especially as VR gets a lot cheaper, like the Oculus Quest, which is only like $300 now, but you get like really high fidelity interactive virtual reality still.
Awesome. Well, maybe so I've got an audience question. I want to take it real quick, which was, do you plan any AR, XR capabilities for training? Are any of those features on the roadmap?
Do you plan any?
Yeah. Do you have any plans for like, I guess, extended reality capabilities, building, into your platform?
Yeah. So the great thing about how we structured our training platform is Codex, the authoring, the analytics tools, those are standalone platforms, right? So we built it so it's very modular. So all the editor and all the analytics does is they're basically just APIs. They just spit out a bunch of data files that they can either take or shoot out. So yes, we have actually looked into AR and integrating our authoring and analytics tools into those kind of technologies as well. So that is down the road. And I think in 10 years, you're probably going to have like a headset that has both AR, VR. You just like flip a switch and then you can just, go between. I think it's probably going to be, down the road soon. Yeah.
And so Eagle, tell us and talk to us, what other types of features do you foresee on your roadmap that will be, a meaningful part of, the training and education, the simulators that you're currently, the types of training environments that you're creating? Can you share with us?
Yeah, sure. So the big thing for, software and content wise, it's how do we make content faster? The big bottleneck right now is content. I saw one of the audience questions on like how fast does each individual learn with VR? It's like compared to kind of real life training, we're talking about cutting training times in half, if not more. But making the content is difficult. So we're probably going to see a lot more platforms doing no code content creation. In terms of hardware, the big thing I'm excited for is haptics. I just want to feel I just want to feel stuff in VR, like touch an airplane or feel heat, feel cold. I think that's like as you add more senses into a VR experience, the more your brain accepts the new reality as real, which is really cool. It's kind of like the Matrix, but it's happening. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Not everybody. I'm always a little bit surprised when we ask the question, have you ever put on and engaged and played or participated in VR? And still today, it's no more than I would suspect it is, especially for the universe of tech enthusiasts and what have you that we engage with. I think it's coming. I think this is an obvious use case. It looks like, I know you're gaining a lot of traction and doing a lot of work with great customers. We really appreciate you being here today.
No
Eagle, look forward to continue to work with you on watching your platform take off.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Well, that was a glimpse into just some of the awesome platforms that are affecting the future of how we will work and how we will perform our jobs. Thank you so much for attending. Gavin, if you're here, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Brian, I want to take a couple of minutes while I've got you here in front of our home audiences. These platforms are really cool to see. As you look at these companies as a general theme in your role at Capital Factory, what are you seeing in terms of, companies adapting right now? What has made these companies successfully pivot or successfully boost their ongoing efforts?
Yeah, well, I think there's one thing that is important, and that's what I mentioned earlier when we were talking to Tony. One of the things we did, and I suspect, and I know most other VC firms and advisory firms, accelerators, have to make an assessment immediately. So on the companies that are in their portfolio and they're working with, what is the impact of COVID to this business? And we don't know perfectly, but we can only do the best we can to guess. So we can then redirect insights to help save or help companies capitalize on these new opportunities that are just right in front of them and right in front of us. And I think, with all three of these particular companies, I talked about what we called internally a COVID impact score. How does COVID affect your business? And I think for all of these businesses, its COVID impact is positive. These are solutions that help people in remote and virtual environments. And we're all doing that before COVID came, and virtual first was really the priority. So I think all of them just being really well positioned, having products, having customers ahead of all this that just helped people solve very critical problems in an urgent time, I think is just a big opportunity. There's many companies that are sitting in that situation. And I think those that are ready to activate that and grow and scale with many of those opportunities are the ones that will really break out. And so I think that's probably one of the most important and one of the most obvious things. Eagle touched on something, another really big trend that we see about the future of work, which is really like low code, no code platforms. And I think there is a huge trend and a huge push towards those people to be able to build your own software application to solve a very specific or a small problem that is just constant. I wish every single day I have to do this step and I have to do that step, and that's so silly. I have to do these steps. Let me just quickly configure a software application by dragging and dropping and building a kind of a new workflow and being able to deploy that in an hour or two or a half day and never having to write a line of code, I think is going to change a lot. We're seeing that as a really big trend that's happening too. Yeah,
no, it's fascinating to see that stuff, and it's sort of like that Arthur C. Clarke quote that everything, technology. I'm going to misquote it, but basically the thrust is if technology is good enough, it feels like magic. And some of these no-code platforms, you're doing things, you're building functions, and you don't even know that you're coding or building functionality. You're just following the flow of the app.
Yeah, that's right. I think so. As a result, on some of this stuff, and it will lag a little bit, but low code, no code, Coder is an example. They're in our portfolio. Just closed a really big round and getting tons of awesome attention and doing some great deployments. I think high performance computing, the processing power, the sheer processing power to do this fast and seamlessly. All the applications that are running in the Walkabout workplace, with so many different applications running in a new type of platform like this, and in virtual reality platforms, I think it will pave way quicker, faster for new types of hardware and new types of high performance computing platforms to make their way into market and to grab some market share as well. So I think that's another trend. It kind of goes right in line with low code, no code, but I think others that we see trends that we're excited about as well.
That's awesome. So Brian, just given your role at Capital Factory, we're just wrapping up here, and maybe could you just take a few seconds to share for those folks that are watching that are maybe thinking of starting a startup, or they've just begun but they haven't engaged with Capital Factory? Can you tell a bit more about how they should link into your network?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, if you're here, you're already doing the right thing. Capital Factory is an incredible community, and there's lots of different ways to plug into that community. And I think attending events, attending meetups, we have virtual memberships. We also have an accelerator. We tend to be a late stage accelerator and work with companies like the ones you saw today that are, have a product that's established and have it in market and are really ready for scale, and institutional size scale is usually the right point for our accelerator program. We frequently make exceptions earlier than that. So I would say if you're interested in and you think venture is the right path for you, it's certainly not for everybody. Raise your hand, reach out, let me know, send me a pitch deck. Jonathan Chavez, a pitch deck, Jill Klimbeck's a pitch deck. And we've got a pretty big team with boots on the ground in Dallas, Austin, Houston. Get in touch with us, and we'll be I think it'll be easy for us to tell you, oh my gosh, there's a really great meetup happening, and there's 10 people that you'll need to meet there, depending on what we can learn really quickly from a pitch deck about your business or your website. So reach out, lean in, get involved, get a virtual membership, attend our events, sign up for the newsletter. Just some of the obvious front doors to Capital Factory are just the ones that I mentioned, and I think there's a plethora of opportunity for people to take advantage of.
Awesome. Brian, thanks so much for the time. Great job to all the startups, and excited to hear more from those teams. Thanks a ton, Gavin. We really appreciate being here. Well, everybody, that was great. Looking at these more mature companies, it's great to see things move. We were talking earlier. We had Cisco and Indeed and Dun & Bradstreet as enterprises talking about the future of work, and now we had some of these platform players talking about the future of work.